Bruins have a new head coach today. They have fired Jim Montgomery. That happened yesterday afternoon. The final hour of the show yesterday, we sat there saying, is he still employed? Does he get canned tonight at tip-off of Celtics-Cavs? It was a little bit earlier than that. They had a late afternoon firing for Jim Montgomery yesterday. He is out after 2+ seasons as Bruins head coach. Done. Gone. In his first year, his team had 135 points.
Not bad.
In his second year, his team had 109 points. Also,
not bad.
Not bad. And this year, his team, 8-9-3. Not terrible when you look at the record. Most guys in Jim Montgomery's spot don't get fired. Most don't get fired in that spot, just based on the record of the first 2 years and the start to this season being mediocre and disappointing in a lot of ways, and a team that has looked lifeless on a lot of nights. Most guys that put together the 2 previous seasons would survive a rough start, 20 games in. This guy did not. And it was telegraphed by the Bruins when they let Jim Montgomery start this year as a lame duck coach. Jim Montgomery, based on the previous 2 years, arguably deserved a contract extension, and he never got it. And that, to me, is the story about this guy. Why didn't he get it? Why was he not extended in the offseason coming into this year? And I think the answer has to be that the Bruins brass didn't love him as their coach. Because if they did, he would have had a contract and he would have been established as the guy. But he came into the year without it, which tells you there was something about Jim Montgomery that they just didn't like. There's something off about him that they didn't like, and that's why they didn't reward him with the deal. And we talked about that at the start of the year.
Yeah.
We talked about that at that press conference when it was being discussed that, oh, we love him and we like him and we're going to get a deal done and we're working towards it. Turns out, nope, they never worked towards it. They maybe had conversations, but they were not productive.
No. And I mean, Peter Chiarelli was here prior. And I'm just trying to go back through the coaches. So to have Claude, to eventually have Butchie, what you have now, Montgomery. I don't know if you really want to be the next guy. Because what do I got to do that these guys haven't done? Because Butchie was a damn good coach. Claude was a good coach here. And he figured it out at the end. In that trip to Montreal to mix up that defense team, to get them to win the cup and eventually get over that hump. And you're still looking for that since 2011. And you've had good teams since then. You've had good players. This is like a 2-step process, 1A, 1B. So it's not the coach. Coach is out, new coach in. Now it goes to the players. Now it's you. You've wanted a different coach. We gave you a different coach. You obviously didn't respond when it mattered to the new coach. At what, 120, 41, and 23? 120, what do you have, 41 losses? 23 times? Like, okay, so you responded during the regular season, but when it mattered the most, you guys choked. And we're putting it on him for not getting you over the hump. Now it's on you. So next step, player shakeup. That's the way I look at this. I mean, this is no shock, right? We've been talking about this for, 2.5, 3 weeks?
Yeah, but we've been talking about this for 2.5 or 3 weeks because Jim Montgomery did not get extended.
Right, because they set this up in August.
And so a part of this story is that the Bruins set him up to be the scapegoat.
Yep.
The Bruins set him up to fail with his players because in their eyes, as you have said so, as a former professional athlete, you have told us multiple times in recent weeks, you've said, when you have a coach who doesn't have a contract extension, as a player, you look at him and you can't take him as seriously as you would someone who is locked up long-term and that the team is committed to, because you look at him and say, yeah, you may not be here next week, pal.
Yeah.
So I'm going to respond to you getting on my ass? Like, maybe.
It's like substitute teachers, and what are you going to do? You're going to jack around and play with spitballs and shoot them at the chalkboard.
Right, paper footballs flying across the room.
Kick, you can just go 3-on-3. This is tough. Sacco's stepping into a tough spot here. I think he is. And I don't know if he's built to be a head coach.
I guess my question is, why was he here to begin with for the start of this season?
Because the Bruins had no balls. Yeah. That's what it came down to. They wanted.
He's right.
They They didn't want him as their head coach anymore. They weren't willing to really go out and extend him. There was something about him that they obviously did not like. You cannot tell me they loved Jim Montgomery as their head coach. If they did, they would have extended him, and they didn't. So the why is important. I don't know that we'll ever get it. We'll ever find out the why with Jim Montgomery, the same way we never found out why he was let go in his last gig.
Right.
Okay? So the whys with Jim Montgomery remain mysterious.
Do you think there's any chance it's still 2 years ago and the underachieving? Because last year I would say that team met expectations. Last year was supposed to be the year you take a step back, you pay for going all in the year before.
It was 2 years ago.
And you lost to the Stanley Cup champ. For me, at least, it felt like Boston actually met expectations last year. 2 years ago, debacle.
And the thing that he's got going for him is, look who he lost to.
Yeah.
It's Florida. They were in the Cup final the last 2 years. They're coming off winning it last spring. I mean, he can say all of those things. They didn't like something about him, and it's damn near impossible with a straight face to let a guy go after those 2 back-to-back seasons. Yeah. There's something they didn't like about him.
You're right.
You can't fire. You're going to fire him after that last year? You just said they met expectations. No, so what do? You come into this year, you let him keep the job, and what they probably did, this is my theory, what they probably did was lowball him in those conversations. And my assumption is whatever salary he was making being hired as the head coach of the Bruins was not great because they were taking a chance on him.
Yeah.
It had blown up in Dallas. They were giving him another crack at being a head coach. My guess is he paid a financial price for that. And so they were starting from a salary he was working on that probably wasn't the best in the league. And so what do? I'll give you a bump and extend you. And he's thinking to himself, come on, guys. I proven myself here. But there's something that they didn't like about him as coach. Something that maybe the players didn't like about him as coach. Because they certainly have not responded to him this year.
Right. What did the Red Sox do with Core? Oh, you know what? We like Core. We don't want him walking into one of those years. We're going to extend him. He accepted the extension.
If you like your manager or coach,
simple.
you extend them.
Pretty simple.
They didn't like him.
Yep.
They didn't like him, and they set him up to fail by not giving him that extension. And so they're getting what they deserve.
Yep. Does it seem like the Cowboys are playing hard for Mike McCarthy?
No.
That's a guy, dead year. Look right at it. That's football, and that's a game that's predicated on enthusiasm, emotion, and being attached to the guy and wanting to run through a wall for him. They look checked out. Dak Prescott, we effing suck. That's your leader. No good coach would allow your quarterback to act that way. They're going to fire his ass at the end of the year.
The Bruins did not have Jim Montgomery's back, and it probably hurt them on the ice and has probably hurt their record. I mean, there's an easy argument to make that if he's firmly entrenched as the guy, that this team does not have some of the nights that it has had to this point.
Yeah, his voice would resonate more.
And so does he deserve to get fired? I mean, does any coach ultimately deserve it, right? These players are paid millions of dollars. They are professional athletes. They are supposed to show up and give their very best every night, but we know that's not the truth. That never happens.
Yeah.
If that happened on every team,
what was the
you wouldn't have bad teams.
Right.
So does he deserve it?
They're clearly not responding
I
to him
guess
anymore.
no more than any other coach deserves it, but I also think that they're not responding, and when you're a coach, this is part of what you sign up for. When your team stinks, you're responsible for trying to straighten it out, and this is why I do think he probably deserves it a little more than any or is deserving of the firing. Nothing he did worked.
Would you want somebody from the outside in instead at this time?
I think someone from the outside would be more effective right now than what they decided to do. Doesn't mean that Sacco can't do a good job.
They're not going to do it.
Or might get a response. But I also think you can't stop here. I think you've got to look at your roster. And I also think, as most fans do believe, based on the interactions we have with Bruins fans, it's time now for Don Sweeney to go on the clock. It's time now for him to be put on notice. If you're operating as a franchise that is concerned with performing at the highest level at all times, how could you not now turn your attention to the guy above the coach, and that is the GM, Don Sweeney? I know everyone will then jump to Neely as well, but let's go one step at a time. It should now be Don Sweeney that's brought into focus.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Maz here. For more Bruins analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.